Good evening, everyone, and welcome to UCD School of Medicine Graduate Entry to Medicine Open Evening. To start this open evening, I'd like to welcome Professor James Jones, who is the Chair of Medicine Degrees Committee 2 and overseeing stages 1 and 2 of the Graduate Entry to Medicine program. So very warm welcome to you all, and I'd like to welcome Professor James Jones.
Great. Okay, thanks, Isabel. Let's see, we activate this. There we are. And there's an FX in that because my mother is a very Catholic lady and I was born on his feast day, Francis Xavier. That's what it stands for. So I'm the head of anatomy, and I thought I'd start with a brief history of our school. And of course, there's the inevitable comparison with the older sister university, Trinity College, which was founded in 1592. And their medical school celebrated a tercentenary. Even that was quite a few years ago. And the story of this medical school begins with Cardinal Newman. And he aimed to establish the Catholic University of Ireland to provide education, tertiary education to the Catholics of Ireland, because of course Trinity was focused on the Protestant community. He actually had great difficulty purchasing a suitable building. But this is through chance what he happened upon it. And he used to be a hall for apothecaries, for training what you might call early pharmacists. And it had lecture theatres already built. And the movement of a gentleman called Benjamin Alcock, the first professor of anatomy in Cork, meant that this establishment became available for sale. And there's a plaque there. It's Cecilia Street, top of Dame Street. You can walk by it. That's where our medical school was originally located. And it transpires that the success of that medical school powered the university through its darkest times, the leanest times. So the success of the medical school was always entwined with the success of the university. 1855 to 1931. We also had a period here in this National Concert Hall, whose original purpose was a great exhibition center, great 19th century great exhibitions, and Ivy Gardens is at the back. This is all part of the great exhibition. This is where I trained as a medical student in the 1980s. And anatomy was over in the right-hand wing as we look at it, and right at the back. It was a marvelous arrangement because it had its own bespoke lecture theatre and a huge dissection room. But it wasn't until 2007 that we finally moved to the campus and joined our colleagues, became part of university life, started to interact, for instance, with biomedical engineers and scientists. So what we're looking at here is this funny triangular shaped building, which is the Institute of Dermatology, the Charles Institute of Dermatology, and it connects Biosystems Ireland on the right, which also connects to the Conway Institute, named after E.J. Conway, our first professor of biochemistry, and he was really a physiologist and a very eminent physiologist. And our school then is to the left. So in our School of Medicine, we're a little unusual and we have 3 programs. We have a 6-year course, a 5-year course, and a 4-year course. And the graduate entry medical program is a 4-year course. It's an accelerated program. These are some up-to-date numbers if you want to look for comparison of student numbers. And also how EU compares to non-EU, it's almost 50-50. And the numbers there for 2022, 105. And it has been a bit higher. There was a blip, I think, last year, but it tends to be around the 100 mark. Our medical school has a significant research output. And here are some of the parameters that show that. We're very successful with research funding, as you can see. We've more than 250 graduate research students, and all this is important because education should be led by research active staff so that you have the very latest cutting edge knowledge for treatment algorithms or indeed the scientific basis for certain diseases. And what happens in the first 2 years of the graduate entry medicine program? It's pretty busy, as Connor no doubt will confirm. And Connor has passed through these 2 years, now is in year 3. But it's intense because, of course, you're going to try and do in 4 years what the typical CAO applicant school leaver does in 6 years. So year 1 is devoted to structure, function, malfunction, and treatment, or anatomy, physiology, pathology, pharmacology. And this is organized according to systems. And hopefully it's integrated in a way that has the correct sequence. So structure comes first and the diseases come later. And if I just flip back here, you can see patient-centered practice is a particular module that's of interest. And it's promulgated by the Medical Council. And so even in week 1, well, as early as possible, we try and introduce patient educators so that although you may not fully understand the basis of the disease, you can actually interact with these patient educators and find out the effect of disease on everyday life. And that helps to stimulate, I suppose, an interest in certain details of a disease that you might pass over if you didn't know the impact of certain details on the patient's life. Here's the entire program, all 4 years. And as has been mentioned, I coordinate stages 1 and 2, and then a colleague takes over for Medical Degrees Committee 3, which deals with stages 3 and 4. Medicine and surgery being the dominant elements here, but there's specialities too, like pediatrics, obstetrics, gynecology. So if we come back to stage 1, we can see the size of these blocks indicates the amount of credits devoted to them. So human form, which is about limb anatomy, upper limb and lower limb, that's 10 credits. Whilst this cellular physiology element here is 5 credits. This one here, combining biochemistry, immunology, and pharmacology, is 10 credits. And in the second trimester, cardiorespiratory physiology here is 10 credits. So that's the big module. And in stage 2, we have gastrointestinal, genitourinary structure, function, disease, treatment, endocrine system. And at this point here, we have an option. So we have a number of modules which the student can choose from. Now, it's not an elective in that it doesn't open the student to the full menu of modules across the entire university. Rather, it's a restricted set of options. In the second trimester, stage 2, the big module here, the 10-credit one, is neurology, really, and it's again designed so that it's neuroanatomy first, then neurophysiology, neuropathology, neurotherapeutics. This has a new coding. This anatomy of head, neck, and spine has got a fairly new focus on detailed anatomy of head and neck that had previously been overlooked. And in the second summer here, there's another module that extends into the summer, advanced clinical skills. And then this is the beginning of the clinical experience, this point on. So in stage 1, this is the last full summer you'll have, and then it's restricted then on. So just to come back to this option, in addition to, let us say, studying radiology, and I run a trauma module, which is important if you're interested in emergency medicine, or stem cells in medicine. There is the possibility that in this summer you take a summer student research project, You undertake this in a laboratory, or it can be in a hospital, and you can do it for credit. And if you do that, it lessens the workload in this trimester. So you've already completed the 5 credits, so this additional work isn't necessary. Now, sometimes students not only do that in the summer, but they come along and take my trauma module for audit. They just sit in and enjoy it and go as they please, and they don't require assessment. Summer student research activity is part of a gold medal award system. Here's an example of a student. This was my student, in fact, who took part. He was 3D printing an airway, which could be used for as a model of intubation and as a model of the difficult airway. And the students compete. And recently we had over 100 competitors. It's very popular and it's growing all the time. We even allow students from other schools to enter. And then a list of 8 finalists is drawn up. And then they compete in a tough environment. If this is the venue, it kind of resembles a law court. And there's a group of, like a jury of interrogators, which can pose questions, and the student has to stand up and present in front of their peers. And that dictates the final winner of the gold medal. Now, I'd like to say a few words, as I am the professor of anatomy, about this important subject. We teach anatomy here through dissection, which is the classic way of teaching anatomy. It hasn't yet been supplanted by a better method, although 3D printing is making remarkable advances. And these are some pictures from our museum. This is actually a gorilla specimen. We have an anthropologist amongst our staff who actually runs a module on anthropology. And this is an image of our dissection room. So we have a storage facility here for up to 20 donors. And the donors that the graduate entry medicine students have are separate, entirely separate to the ones that are devoted to the undergrad medical students. And this separation was required because it turned out that our junior colleagues, I suppose in their youth, rather rushed through the dissection and is not perhaps as careful as a more mature graduate entry medical student. Well, you get the idea, so we separated the bodies so that the best use is applied to our donors. We also have a standard array of anatomical models, which are the SAMSO models from Germany. We have a 3D printing facility, which we keep trying to develop. We have a plastination facility, I think the only one in Ireland. So in this method, you might have seen something about this. You immerse the body part in acetone, and you gradually, under vacuum and refrigerated conditions, you replace it with essentially sort of silicone, hard silicone, and you plastinate the object, which means that you can take a brain out and handle it, and you can take it out of the dissection room and examine it. And it looks like a model, but it's actually a real person's specimen. And these have to be carefully audited, and the inspector of anatomy checks our audit when we create these specimens. Finally, on completion of dissection, our donors, if the relatives wish, are offered a place in our shared medical school plot in Glasnevin. And it's shared here with our colleagues in the Royal College of Surgeons and Trinity College, Dublin. And the 3 professors of anatomy meet twice a year to check over the condition of the plot and discuss common issues related to anatomical examination in Ireland. And there may be a new tissue bill, it's forever being proposed, that will regulate this area even more closely. So the relatives of our donors make the sacrifice, really. They don't get an immediate funeral. They have to wait a full year before the body is returned. And then they have the interment. When you finish the first 2 years, then it's onto the clinical stage, and we celebrate that transition with what we call the white coat ceremony. It's rather an American idea. And in fact, one of our alumni, I think, is a philanthropist who actually financially supports this. Every student is given a white coat, and we have a grand procession, and we celebrate that transition in the O'Reilly Hall. So you can see this is caught during the pandemic. Everyone is wearing masks. But it's quite an enjoyable event. And just when you think it's safe, you're in stage 3, I reappear, because now we have a satellite in the Mater Hospital, where the old Mater Hospital has been repurposed to be an educational institution. And we have 2 theatres now, the clinical anatomy theatres. We focus, of course, on postgraduate education. And you might think the Royal College of Surgeons take care of this, and they have a new building on York Street, but unfortunately it wasn't designed to take donors, and there is no human dissection done there. So again, I think we're the only school that has this facility in Ireland. And we try to embrace the undergraduate students when we're doing this postgraduate, just for revision, because anatomy isn't terribly complicated, it's just that there's an awful lot of it, and you just forget it so quickly. So we have to constantly remind ourselves of the important elements. And we're so lucky here because when that move was made to the new adult general hospital in the Mater, all the equipment that was there was left in situ. And the rule is you have to buy a whole new set of equipment when you make that transition. So now we've got proper operating theater lights and wonderful equipment, even a C-arm to do constant X-ray, fluoroscopy, and so on. And you might think we were acting like wannabe surgeons here. We do have the facilities to properly scrub up, more or less just to instill the proper procedures rather than it being truly aseptic, because of course our donors are dead. So that's an interesting development. I think I'll just draw the talk to a close at this point and invite any questions you might have so far before we get to our next speaker.
Thank you, Professor Jones. We will also have a chance for some questions and answers at the end, just in case you have any ones that pop into your head kind of throughout. I'd like to welcome Connor Kennedy, who is in stage 3 of the graduate entry medicine program, to just give you a bit of a student perspective on the program. So please welcome. I'll pop your. Oh yeah.
Right, hello. You're all very quiet. Nice, very good. Hello. Good to see so many of you. I believe this is also being recorded, so hello to the people in Zoom who may never be watching this and wondering what is this like as a student in graduate entry medicine. A lot of ground to cover. It's scheduled for 30 minutes. I'm not sure if we'll cover 30 minutes. As you can see, I'm wearing jeans, and as such, I'm very approachable. So if you have any questions during the talk, fire away. I'm happy to answer them. There is also some time at the end after Professor Donnelly's talk. We'll have a Q&A as well. So again, feel free to interrupt me. So what are we going to do? We're just going to cover getting to medicine, preclinical, the clinical, and then kind of my own perspective and questions. And I kind of want to start with the first question you might have, which is, am I out of my mind to be considering doing another degree? And you may have this question for many reasons. Some of you will be in the middle of completing your first degree, in which case you might think, why would I do it again? Some of you working professionals have worked for maybe a few or a number of years and wondering why you might enter back into the college environment. A little bit about my background. I graduated from UCD in 2019, and I went off for my high-flying job and as a management consultant. And I thought that was great. It was excellent. I was making loads of money. I got to wear loads of suits, and I made PowerPoint slides. As you can tell, my slides are beautiful. Can you tell I used to make them for a living? And it was great. In my final years in UCD, I did a research project with Dr. Mark Pickering, which was building microscopes and prototype development. And this kind of job offered me the chance to do a lot more of that I really enjoyed working with my hands. I really enjoyed working with people. And I thought this was going to be the answer for the rest of my life. But slowly and surely, I realized that probably wasn't the case. I'd always had the idea of doing medicine in the back of my mind, but I'd never really fully committed. It was the shock of my life to my mother when I told her I was applying for medicine. And she said, "Do you not, there's an exam?" And I was like, "I've already done the exam. Don't worry. It's all going fine." So my background was, again, a degree in physiology, which is out of the School of Medicine here. But I kind of was going in a completely other direction when I applied for the graduate entry medicine program. And this whole "am I out of my mind" question, well, probably a little bit. You have to be a little bit, but nothing gets done without madness. It inspires creativity. And it's also an excellent opportunity for people from a really diverse set of backgrounds to enter into medicine. And it is and remains the great strength of the graduate entry medicine program, is that you're going to have people from all over. We've got people who just finished degrees in, human health and disease, and that's well and good. And that seemed like a natural stepping stone. We've one student who had an entire career with the Dublin Fire Brigade as a paramedic before coming back to do it. And then somebody who did ballet for performance as her first degree. So it really does take all sorts. But I guess what we all have in common was a passion to use those kind of people skills and in essence, some of those performance skills that I'm sure this particular student has kind of to do something a bit better. That kind of answers the last question. Who does the course suit? It suits everybody, well, everybody who wants to be a doctor, at least. Because if you don't really want to be a doctor, there are long nights, early mornings, and kind of dark corners, and really what gets you through those is passion. It's not that you need to be blisteringly more intelligent than everybody else. It's that really at the end of the day, if you want to be there, you will get through it. And that addresses doubts. Look at me, I've cleared on my bullet points. I'm brilliant. Boring entry requirements. Right, Irish and EU applicants, you have to have a minimum of a 2-1 in your first degree. That means if you did, for whatever reason, a second bachelor's degree, it's your first degree that counts, not a master's, not a PhD, but in your first bac. And then a GAMSAT score of about 58. This varies from year to year, as Professor Jones said. The tends to be a little bit lower in years where more students were taken, a little bit higher in years where less students were taken, but it floats round about the 58 mark. The GAMSAT is at twice a year, so there's plenty of opportunities to get it right. And that's pretty much it. Once you have your 2-1, the sole determinant is your GAMSAT score. So for those of you still in university, you get the 2-1. For those of you out of university, get the GAMSAT. That's pretty much it. And then when you're in making a medic, I guess in essence, I can show you curriculum diagrams, and I will show you what the course looks like in a minute, but it kind of goes from 1 through 4. From your first day, you're going to start learning that background knowledge, essential anatomy and physiology, and not a day goes by where you don't need it. It's not going to be like any degree you've done before, where you have your 12-week lecture series. You must know what's on all those slides after 12 weeks. And then afterwards, you'll be successful in an exam. And then you go, woo, yay, and then go into your grad scheme at PwC. What you learn from day 1 is relevant. I started my first day of placement in Mullingar back in August, and I was asked to draw the structure of alanine, which I hadn't done in 2 years. Now I should have been able to because I had been taught it, but it is relevant. It relates to how many nitrogen groups you can produce to vasodilate and blah, 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 blah. But it starts with strong foundations and strong background knowledge. That isn't to exclude people who don't have a science background, as that advantage expires very quickly, because they teach everything from first principles. So those of you with no prior experience will get introduced. Those of you with prior experience, you kind of have a chance to do a quick flyover of stuff you may have done before and really appreciate how the material relates to pathology. Communication skills, again, starts with that early patient contact, and it is excellent. It's a really, really excellent way to learn because you've just had a week-long lecture series on cystic fibrosis, and then on the Friday, you will have a patient come in with cystic fibrosis and tell you about how their disease and the process they go through affects them as a person. And that really guarantees you'll never forget it. And really kind of reminds you, even though you're in a classroom setting and it can feel kind of intangible, exactly what you're working towards, which is good. It doesn't help 2-hour biochemistry lectures, but it really does help keep in focus the bigger goal. And then clinical skills, that starts in your second year. It started for me, we were kind of the COVID cohort. So it starts in your second year, and that's when you'll actually pick up a stethoscope and actually listen and go, vesicular, without any idea what it means. Don't worry, right? They just want to see that you're okay with people. And then that kind of brings you on to safety. And safety is the main thing they want to know of you before you finish your medical degree, is they don't need you to be a wonderful Dr. House-esque diagnostician. They need to know you're safe and respectful when dealing with patients. So that's kind of the 4 things that make a medic. And how do they do it? So this is your stages 1 and 2. Semester 1 is your clinical sciences. That's the background stuff. You'll do genetics, immunology. You'll do lots of limb anatomy, and you'll do some basic cellular physiology. This is a big hurdle. This can be really tough because you're like, this doesn't feel like medicine at all, but it'll get there, trust me. Then you have a set of exams, and then it goes into your systems-based medicine. You have your cardiothoracic semester. This is Gen 1, semester 2, and that's when you have your anatomy, physiology, pathology, pharmacology. Then you have another set of exams. That brings you on to summer. I've had a beach ball here to elicit fun, yay. Or you can do a research project, which is also fun in its own way. I didn't do one. I had the opportunity to do the Coakley Medal for dissection, which is, to my knowledge, I don't think another university offers. I don't think there's another dissection medal in another university. They might. Anyway, it was an excellent opportunity. It means I got to spend my summer with a donor interested in and dissecting a particular piece of anatomy, which is amazing because you get to do an incredible amount of hours. If you are interested in surgery, surgical anatomy, I mean, anatomy is the basis of surgery. So if that's what you're interested in, it's a great opportunity. Unfortunately, it didn't count for credit, so I had to see Professor Jones in September for trauma, but that was a brilliant module anyway. That brings you into your gastrointestinal semester. And that's, again, same thing we've heard before: anatomy, physiology, pathology, pharmacology, another set of exams. And then neuro, I call this the kitchen sink semester, because you're about to go into the hospitals and you have to cover everything really quickly. You have to cover everything you haven't had a chance to go over. So of course you have your neurology, your anatomy, physiology, pathology, pharmacology, but then you also have the start of your clinical modules, which are, you have a pediatrics and obstetrics, you've ENT and ophthalmology, and then you've psychiatry as well. There's lots of stuff. And you'll notice I have lots more ticks here. You've a lot of exams, you know. You do have to achieve in 4 years everything that the undergrads achieve in 6 years. And that kind of starts with a clustering. Normally, I think they do 60 credits a year, but I think in the first year of GEM, you'll do 75. In the second year of GEM, you'll do 65 or 70. So you do quite a few more credits. Then you have a rake load of exams. There's no beach ball here, obviously, because that's when you start your advanced clinical skills placement. And that's when you go into the hospital. So at this stage, you will have selected a hospital to be at one of our sister sites, so at Vincent's or the Mater. And then you will do a month-long placement, 2 weeks in medicine and 2 weeks in surgery. And then it gets brilliant because everything you've kind of been working towards gets a bit more tangible. Then you go into clinical medicine. Please ignore this box down the bottom. But this is when you will join the undergraduate years. So you've done 2 years, the undergraduates have done 4 years. But when you join your clinical years, you'll all be together. You'll just be either the group at the Mater or you'll be the group at Vincent's. Even though the group at the Mater are better. But you'll just be the year at the Mater or the year at Vincent's. And then you start doing your medicine 1 and surgery A. And that's day to day. You're in whatever hospital you're assigned to, day in, day out, assigned to whatever team you're meant to be assigned to, learning whatever you need to learn, which at this stage is all of medicine and surgery, everything under the skin, unless you're attached to dermatology, which then includes the skin. And yes, if you're attached to the Mater or Vincent's, you'll spend at least 50% of your time in the Mater or Vincent's. But then, I spent my first 3 weeks in Mullingar, which was great. I was attached to the medicine of the elderly and stroke team. And that was a really, really cool learning experience. And the team are great, really, really hands-on. This experience is going to be what you make of it. You know, there are people who don't really engage with the teams. and there are people who will come in and, you know, get whatever they need to get signed to sign off on their placement. But you really have such an incredible opportunity here to engage with your teams. Go to surgery, ask if you can scrub in, go to procedures, follow cases from start to finish, you know, engage with the new patients that are on the ward, of course, within the bounds of what the team will let you do. But it's great. This is when all of your knowledge starts to come into practice. So you've medicine 1, surgery A, that's kind of just what I've finished now. That's from end of August until end of November. Then you have a set of exams. Then you've got a couple of weeks of forensic and legal medicine. This stuff is also quite important. You need to know the ins and outs of coroner's offices and pronouncing somebody legally dead, et cetera, et cetera. And then after Christmas, straight into medicine 2 and surgery B. That is another 12 weeks. Starting in January brings you through to March. You have your finals in medicine and surgery then, and then you start stage 4. And stage 4 is your specialty years. So as I say, this is about March. You'll do either peds obs or GP and psych, March to June. And then you'll have space for summer elective. And then when you come back in September, you'll do whatever you didn't do. Does that make sense? Am I making sense here? Good. I'm getting some nods. None convincing. So then you'll do whatever you didn't do. So if I'm going to start pediatrics and obstetrics in March, I'll have pediatrics for 6 weeks. Then I'll have an exam. Then I'll have obstetrics for 6 weeks. Then I'll have an exam. Then I'll have an 8-week period off for the summer, and then I'll come back and I'll do GP and psych. That brings you up to Christmas. And after Christmas, you have or during Christmas, you have your social work module, and then it's professional completion. And what's professional completion is another elective, something called a sub internship, which is essentially where you shadow an intern and see what it's like to do the job of an actual intern. You have an opportunity to do more electives, which is great because nothing is guaranteed, you know, like you do in your 6 weeks of medicine, like I just did in medicine 1, you're assigned to 2 teams for 3 weeks each, and you don't get to choose, which kind of is a good thing. I was terribly afraid of the kidneys, and then I was assigned to the kidneys, didn't pick them, and now I know plenty about the kidneys, so that's nice. But really, you're not there to learn about any particular specialty. You're actually there to learn how to interact with patients. Kind of the workup from admission to discharge. And then the cherry on top is whatever you can learn from your particular consultants. And then after that, I guess I chucked all these boxes together because intern year, SHO year, you've streamed in with the undergrads at this stage. And after you graduate, post stage 4, lovely big dinner in O'Reilly Hall, lots of rounds of applause, hats throwing in the air. And then you start your intern year, and then you're a doctor, which gets very scary. But it's essentially just the pathway from then on. So I will tell you that it flies. I guess is more about my perspective. It absolutely flies. It felt like I was in trauma last week, but that was a long time ago. Yeah, so it really flies when you get to the hospital. Like I can already feel myself missing medicine surgery, even though I've got more to come. I guess to address one of the concerns about a lot of people, I mean, I thought, I was like, I'm going to be so old by the time I finish. Oh my God, you know? But my mom said you could either be old and not be a doctor, or you could old and be a doctor. And I thought, fair enough. I know which one I picked. So why UCD? You must always cite your sources. I've cited my own unbiased opinion. Can't make bold claims outside of them. But I do think you'd be hard pressed to find a better university in Ireland that offers a graduate program. I think for a lot of the reasons that Professor Jones shared. We have an excellent campus here that's really student focused. The gym is free. There's lots of library spaces. There's lots of reasons that make it a really nice place to be for 12 hours a day if you choose to be here 12 hours a day and do your study and eat your porridge and heat up your dinner in the microwaves and go back to the library. So it's a really excellent setup that we have here in Belfield. And then when you get into your clinical years, we have some of the best hospitals in Ireland that you can be attached to, some really, really specialized centers. So I think Vincent's is a liver transplant center, Mater is a kidney transplant center, heart and lung transplants, National Spinal Injury Unit is there. Now, again, it's you don't pick your hospital based off any particular individual specialty because you might not be attached to them, but it's a really great opportunity to learn from what are the national centers of excellence in the country. We've got renowned physician educators and their consultants in each of the clinical sites, but we've got, you know, consultants who did years at Brigham and Women's, which is a Harvard teaching hospital, or Sloan Kettering Memorial, or Peter Mac, which is one of the international cancer centers down in Melbourne, and then come back here to share their expertise. So you don't have to go to all those places. You could just pop down to Eccles Street and learn there. And then again, once you get to the hospital, the student facilities are great. We've got a ping pong table and Cafe Sol. That's pretty much my personality now, so that's all I need. But there's plenty there. And as well, there's also kind of a great emphasis on pastoral care from the admin staff. Like I said, it's my whole personality. It does kind of take over a bit. It can be this big, hungry monster that eats your entire life. It doesn't have to be. I kind of let it, because you meet such excellent people. You meet people who will, you know, mostly be a family to you, not only because you see them for 16 hours a day, and then you see your bed for the other 8. But they're good people. They've chosen to be here broadly for the same reasons you have. So you already have a lot in common with them. And because you spend so much time with them, you become good friends. You take ski trips. We have an annual surfing trip, which is great. Because of my experience in the Coakley competition and what I was able to kind of familiarize myself with anatomy, I got involved with a professor over at Stanford. So I was able to go and visit his lab and do an observership at Stanford in neurosurgery, which was amazing. And yeah, look, friends for life, great opportunities. That's enough of looking at my face. Any questions?
And thank you, Conor. We appreciate as well that you have exams coming up. So thank you for taking the time to come and give a student's perspective on the graduate entry into medicine program. And I know you've already heard a little bit from Professor Suzanne Donnelly, but just to give you a full introduction. So I'd like to welcome Professor Donnelly, who is the Associate Dean of Programs and Education Innovation at UCD, and the Director of Clinical Education as well. So we welcome you, Professor Donnelly.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I don't know, can you hear me? It's not a huge room. So I suppose just to say I've arrived in a little bit late. I work in the Mater, where I'm a consultant rheumatologist, notably not on the crutches that I saw that you had on your image for the consultant body. Thank you, Conor. And I'm really just here to speak to you a little bit about the clinical parts of the program. And I do appreciate actually Conor has probably done my job for me. And I'm now thinking what other bits of my job actually Conor you might like to do. But anyway, you're all very welcome. And I suppose I think the thing about speaking to people who are interested in, oh, it's not up, is it? Sorry, thank you. People who are interested in the GEM program is that you're not going to do it without significant consideration, because for all the reasons that you know, it's your time, it's an investment. So very often people who come to these open evenings, they've done their research and they kind of know a lot about this. So I just wanted to tell you what I think are some of the unique aspects of the clinical parts of our program. You've already heard really what clinical education is, and I guess just to make the point that it is all of the aspects of your medical education that really involve patients and activities, tasks, competencies that you need to do the job of a doctor. And I mean, as I say, Conor has done my job for me here, but in terms of what those are, it boils down to be able to meet a patient, establish a rapport with the patient, and enable them to tell you their story, and to interpret that in the light of the knowledge that you've learned, what you already know about the human body, how it works, how sometimes it doesn't work, and what you've already learned about disease processes. And again, physical examination is then what you do. You examine patients to try and find signs of disease. It's one of the most fascinating things. And then you have to engage in what we call clinical reasoning and clinical decision making. And really, as students, you don't need to do much of the decision making. We don't give students huge responsibilities, but you do watch other doctors making clinical decisions, and you learn what's important and what you need to factor in for those. Again, Conor has really gone through this, and I really just put it up to show you that I think it's important, if you are thinking of coming in to do medicine, that you do know what you're taking on. I think it's only fair that you know what is involved. I was still doing exams in my mid-30s, so that would be the exception. But you know, you actually, it's a journey that doesn't stop when you get your medical degree. And you go from, you know, you go through the 4-year program, then you'll have a year as an intern. And then you can do somewhere between 4 and 8 years, depending on what you want to do, before you would be fully qualified as a recognized specialist. And it's important to note that general practitioners, even though they have the word general in their title, they are in fact specialist doctors in those areas. So for us, really, what's important is that we teach you the kind of the foundations in a clinical context. And I suppose Conor has given you his lived experience of what that's like. And what's nice for me is that that's how we designed it. And it seems that that's how it's working. We do case-based learning. We've been doing it for 14 years now. What we do is we provide patient cases, and students use the actual case to interrogate their understanding of anatomy, physiology, and pathology. We have integrated clinical skills. COVID made that a little bit difficult because we do bring real patients into Belfield, and obviously we couldn't do that during COVID. So I know your cohort lost out a bit, but we're back fully up to speed with that now. And the patient educator program, which has been running since 2009, is, again, to my knowledge, unique in Ireland, where we have a group of patients recruited through charities who come in and teach our medical students. And it's a wonderful, absolutely wonderful experience. And we're incredibly grateful to all of those who participate. You know, these are the sorts of things that you answer when you're learning the basic biomedical sciences in context. For the patient encounters, it's, you know, how do you kind of develop your style with patients? How do you develop a little bit of confidence with patients? And then for the other things, it's really about interrogating the importance of the basics of anatomy, physiology, and things like pathology in relation to patients that you're going to meet. And that really was the foundation of all the integrated stuff that we designed into the course. And again, really nice to hear Conor saying it is motivating. It keeps reminding you of why you're plowing through stuff and why it's relevant. The next piece, and I'll just show you what happens after that, is the white coat ceremony. And you'll see here a picture of the white coat ceremony. This kind of marks the transition, as we call it. We call it transition year. And it marks the transition between the Belfield-based piece of what you do and actually going into hospitals. And that happens around about February of the second year, after which you really are doing, what did you describe, the kitchen sink year? Is that it, Conor? But where you really are, you're doing both clinical work and clinical skills work to get you ready for that transition. And you're also finishing up some basic stuff. The transition phase, actually, I'm very proud of. We spent a lot of time redesigning it. It works incredibly well, and I know it works incredibly well because we have very few students who have problems traversing the examinations at the end of it. And what we do know is that when you get through your clinical exam at the end of your 4-week block in June, you are very well placed to be successful. And again, we do a little bit of data looking at students' performance and prediction of success. And once students kind of hit that and they've been successful there, really nobody fails after that. You get through. From my perspective, again, might be worth just saying to you that our course, while we merged the years then for the last 2 years at this point, and again, very, very deliberately designed at this point, when you go out to do your kind of mid-May to mid-June placements in our big hospitals, we've got rid of all the other students. Okay, so all of the undergrad years and all of the final meds have qualified, they've finished, but the undergrad students who would be in the year that you will be joining are gone. And so what that means is you have these huge, big sites full of experts, as Conor has said, to yourselves. And again, that has worked really well for us. So you have the place to yourselves, you have the full attention of all of our teachers, all of our tutors for those 4 weeks to really make sure that even though you've been doing a lot, you have a lot going on, to really make sure that you've got the very best chance of getting your clinical skills and all that stuff in place. And again, it has worked really well, and delighted that it has done so. The next thing that happens is what Conor has described, which is what we call immersive clinical education. I'm a rheumatologist over in the Mater. Again, we feel a little bit Mater-centric, but it is a wonderful place to work and to learn. And so I would have students with me in my clinics from August through until last week, actually. So I would have 2 or 3 UCD students with me and attached to our team. On our team, we have 4 consultants, we have 6 junior doctors, and we have 5 nurse specialists in rheumatology in the Mater. And the students come and they just immerse themselves into the team. As Conor said, some people get more out of it than others. Our graduate entry students tend to be really good at getting things out of it. And usually, certainly in Mater rheumatology anyway, that includes a free lunch once or twice a week. So again, Conor has gone through this, but just to really underscore the fact that one of the most important things really about becoming a doctor is having the opportunities to see patients, to practice your skills. And I don't mean practice on patients, but you're practicing your skills of exam and history taking. And, I'm a consultant for, I think, how long, 17 years in the Mater. I don't remember any time any patient said they didn't want to see a medical student. There is an ethos that the students are an important and vibrant part of the institution. And it's a very welcoming place for medical students. And I think, Conor, you would attest to that. We do have more hospitals than just the Mater, just to be clear. We have a big training network. Obviously, you went to Mullingar, Conor. And within medicine and surgery, you can go to some of our other hospitals. So some students will spend time down the road in Loughlin's time. Some will spend some time in St. Michael's and Delary. Some will spend time up in Beacon. So we've a whole host of hospitals, and we move people around because it's good to get experience. And it's good to see the different specialties and the different ways medicine is practiced. And we also have, as Conor said, we've these very specialist sites. So I don't know, maybe some of you are sitting here thinking you want to be heart transplant surgeons or lung transplant surgeons, or maybe you want to be liver transplant surgeons, or maybe you want to be experts in pulmonary hypertension. We have multiple national referral centres. We run multiple quaternary national level centres of expertise out of our big hospitals. And again, even if you're not attached to the heart and lung transplant team, there is no reason why, as a medical student, you can't go and ask permission to go and talk to a patient. These things are all there. And also you get taught generally outside of the team by a broader range of faculty. There is the table tennis table, Conor. I'm allowed to take a photograph of it and show it. But we have very much invested in our facilities for students, and I'm jealous of the Mater facilities. They're better than the facilities I have access to. This is the table tennis table in the student room in the Mater, and you can see from the windows it's in the old part of the building, which was very kindly bequeathed to us by the nuns when they left that building. The new building was built for education purposes, and that probably speaks more to the long tradition of education than even I can. This is not a person. This is a plastic dummy, but this is our professor of surgery, Prof. Cahill, who I think I might have seen in one of your slides. Did I know? Yeah. So Prof. Cahill, who's our prof of surgery, and this is the old theatre unit in the Mater. So this is where operations used to be done until about 10, 11 years ago. And again, was made available to us for teaching and training purposes over there. So these facilities here are actually in St. Vincent's. And this is the Mater Lecture Theatre, where actually I was given a talk just yesterday morning. So as I say, the one thing I will say to you is that this covers all of this, okay? And this is where you finish. There is a good bit to go afterward. And that would be the one thing I would say to you, that if you're coming back, you have your 4 years, you have your year as an intern, and then you have somewhere between 4 and 8 years of postgraduate training. You will be working. You will be earning, and you will be part of a big community of young doctors who are all doing the same thing as you. So you don't feel like you're out of kilter with your peers, but it certainly doesn't finish after 4 years. And I do think that's important that you know that, because I think you need to know what you're committing to. All right. I don't know of any of our graduates who finish after 4 years and decide not to practice. and particularly not from the GEM cohort, because I think the thought and planning that goes into it means that you're pretty much committed to it from the start.